The hum of the orbital station was a comforting constant as Captain Alina Voss gazed out at Earth below, a planet brimming with life but fraying at the edges. Cities pulsed with artificial brilliance, but their once vibrant cultures had grown stagnant. Humanity had reached the stars long ago, but progress had slowed, replaced by bureaucratic decay and complacency. Alina's reverie was interrupted by the soft chime of her communicator. "Captain, they're ready for you in the council chamber," came the voice of Lieutenant Rios, her second in command. "On my way," she replied, adjusting the stiff collar of her uniform. She hadn't been back to Earth's central command in years, and the weight of this summons was clear. Whatever the council wanted, it wasn't routine. The chamber was cavernous, its walls adorned with holographic projections of Earth's history, humanity's first steps on the moon, the construction of the orbital rings, the terraforming of Mars. Sitting at the head of the room was Chancellor Urek, his piercing gaze locked on Alina the moment she entered. "Captain Voss," Urek began, his voice sharp and measured, "you've been summoned because you're one of the few commanders with both the skill and the will to undertake a mission of unparalleled importance." Alina crossed her arms, a flicker of irritation flashing across her face. "Let's skip the flattery, Chancellor. What do you need?" Urek smirked, gesturing to an archivist who stepped forward, activating a holographic projection. A series of ancient symbols and fragmented maps flickered into view. "This is the Aegis Codex," Urek said, his tone heavy with gravity. "It was lost during the Cataclysm Wars over 1,000 years ago. Recently, fragments of its existence resurfaced, broadcasts in extinct Earth languages originating from the Shard Expanse." Alina frowned. The Shard Expanse was a no-man's land of spatial wreckage, the graveyard of countless failed expeditions. Few returned, and those who did spoke of madness, destruction, and things that defied reason. "The Codex," Urek continued, "is more than just an artifact. It's a guide, one that could reverse the stagnation gripping our society. It holds the blueprints for rebuilding ecosystems, advancing technology, and unifying fractured civilizations." "Let me guess," Alina said, her voice dry. "You want me to find it." Urek nodded. "You'll command the Ecliptica, Earth's most advanced exploration vessel. Your crew will include experts in linguistics, engineering, and navigation. But make no mistake, this mission is fraught with danger. Rogue A-fleets, spatial anomalies, and less tangible threats await you in the expanse." Alina stared at the hologram, her mind racing. She wasn't one to shy away from danger, but this felt different. It wasn't just the peril of the expanse. It was the weight of the past, the idea of resurrecting something humanity had buried long ago. After a long pause, she met Urek's gaze. "If I do this, it's my mission. No interference from bureaucrats. I choose my crew, and I set the course." "Agreed," Urek said, extending a hand. "Humanity's future rests on your shoulders, Captain Voss. Don't let us down." As she left the chamber, the ancient symbols of the Codex burned in her mind. The whispers from the past had begun, and they were calling her name. The Ecliptica loomed in the dry dock, a sleek marvel of engineering bristling with advanced technology. Its hull shimmered with adaptive plating, designed to endure the chaos of the Shard Expanse. Alina Voss surveyed the ship from the observation deck, her thoughts shadowed by doubts about the crew she was assembling. "Captain," Lieutenant Rios' voice broke through her reverie. He stepped forward, holding a datapad. "Your team's arrived. You're going to want to meet them before we launch." Alina nodded, heading for the conference room where her crew awaited. As she entered, the room's chatter hushed. 4 faces turned to her, each marked with their own brand of intensity. "Let's get one thing straight," Alina said, her voice cutting through the silence. "This mission isn't a sightseeing tour. We're heading into the unknown, and the Shard Expanse isn't forgiving. If you're not up for it, speak now." Nobody spoke. "Good. Then let's get introductions over with," she continued, nodding toward a wiry man with a cocky grin. "Kieran Drake," the man said, leaning back in his chair. "Pilot. If it flies, I can handle it. Heard the Expanse is a nightmare, so this should be fun." Alina raised an eyebrow. "Confidence is good, Drake. Just make sure it's not arrogance when we're dodging anomalies." Next was an older, stoic alien with silver-gray scales and deep-set, unreadable eyes. "Dr. Valen," he introduced himself, his voice a low rumble. "Cinelinguist and cultural analyst. The broadcasts are intriguing. I'm here to ensure we decipher them accurately." Alina moved to the young woman with sharp features and nervous energy. "Dana Corvallis," she offered, adjusting her glasses. "Engineer. I specialize in countermeasures, system integration, and making sure rogue AIs don't kill us all." The final figure didn't speak immediately. He was an imposing man, broad-shouldered and silent, his uniform unadorned. "Major Alec Trask," he finally said, "security." Alina studied him for a moment. "Ex-military." "Former Black Ops?" Trask confirmed. Alina nodded, suppressing a sigh. A soldier with a classified past wasn't her first choice, but in the Expanse, muscle and experience were assets she couldn't afford to turn down. Their first challenge came sooner than expected. Barely an hour after departing Earth's orbit, the Ecliptica detected an incoming vessel broadcasting hostile intent. The ship belonged to the Zalkran Dominion, a faction infamous for its aggressive expansion and disdain for Earth's independence. The Dominion cruiser hailed them, its captain, a skeletal figure with a serpentine neck, appearing on the main screen. "Turn back, Earthlings," he hissed. "The Shard Expanse is forbidden. The Codex belongs to no one, least of all you." Alina stepped forward. "We're on a sanctioned mission under the Treaty of Galactic Concordance. Interference is an act of war." "Then consider this war," the Zalkran captain sneered, cutting the transmission. Moments later, alarms blared as the Dominion vessel opened fire. "Drake evasive maneuvers," Alina shouted, gripping her chair. The Ecliptica twisted and spun, Drake's expert piloting keeping them just ahead of the Dominion's weapons. Corvallis scrambled to deploy countermeasures, flooding the void with sensor-disrupting decoys. As the Ecliptica broke free of the Dominion's range, Trask stood from his station, his voice low but firm. "They'll be back, Captain. And next time, they won't let us run." Alina tightened her grip on the console. The Dominion was a new threat, but the tensions within her crew simmered just below the surface. If they didn't find unity soon, the Expanse would tear them apart before the journey even began. The vastness of the Shard Expanse stretched before the Ecliptica, an endless graveyard of shattered ships, rogue celestial debris, and faint glimmers of strange energy. The crew stared at the view screen in silence as they crossed the threshold, the last remnants of charted space dissolving behind them. Alina stood at the center of the command deck, her voice steady. "Drake, maintain course. Corvallis, ensure our shields are optimized for any spatial anomalies." Captain," Corvallis said, her fingers flying across her console. "Valen, keep monitoring the broadcasts. I want updates the moment we get anything coherent." The alien linguist inclined his head, his long fingers deftly adjusting his instruments. "Understood. The signals are fragmented, but their complexity suggests intent. This was no accident." Alina's focus shifted to Major Trask, who stood at his post like a sentinel. "Trask, I want a full sweep of the ship. Make sure our weapons are operational and our defenses are primed." "Already done," he replied, his deep voice unwavering. "But I'd recommend doubling the internal patrols. The Dominion won't be our only problem out here." Alina nodded, her thoughts heavy. The Zalkran Dominion's pursuit had been a warning, but the Expanse itself was the true danger, a realm of chaos that had swallowed countless explorers before them. Hours passed in uneasy quiet, the hum of the ship's engines a constant companion. The crew worked diligently, but the tension was palpable. Each member bore their own weight of fear, anticipation, and doubt. The silence broke with a sharp alert. "Captain," Drake called out, his tone unusually serious. "We've got something ahead. It's massive and moving." The view screen zoomed in, revealing a hulking structure drifting through the expanse. It was an ancient vessel, its design unlike anything in Earth's records. Spires jutted from its hull, and its surface glowed faintly with pulsating energy patterns. "Is that a ship?" Corvallis asked, her voice tinged with awe. "Part ship, part station," Valen murmured, leaning closer to the screen. "This architecture predates most known civilizations. It could be a waypoint for whoever sent the codex signals. Or a trap," Trask interjected, his hand resting on the hilt of his sidearm. Alina's jaw tightened. "Drake, bring us in slowly. Corvallis, scan for any active systems. Valen, see if you can match this design to anything in your archives." As the Ecliptica approached, the ship's sensors lit up with activity. Corvallis frowned at her console. "I'm picking up faint power signatures, and something else. It's like an echo, but it's not mechanical." "Explain," Elena said. "I can't. It's like a memory, something lingering." Elena's stomach churned, but she kept her voice firm. "Prepare a boarding party. Trask, you're with me. Valen, Corvallis, you're coming too. Drake, keep the ship ready for a quick exit." "Captain, are you sure?" Trask asked. Elena's eyes remained locked on the derelict. "If the codex is out here, it's leaving us breadcrumbs, and we don't have the luxury of hesitation." As the boarding party suited up, the glow of the ancient vessel grew brighter, as if it sensed their approach. The unknown loomed before them, but Elena knew they couldn't turn back now. The expanse was testing them, and the answers they sought lay within. The boarding craft glided toward the ancient vessel, its engines muffled by the vacuum of space. Through the viewport, Elena studied the structure's intricate details, glyphs carved into the hull, spiraling patterns that seemed to shift as they approached. It was both beautiful and unnerving. "This place gives me the creeps," Corvallis muttered, her voice breaking the tense silence. "Focus," Elena said firmly, her eyes scanning for an entry point. "We're here to learn, not speculate." Trask, seated beside her, was silent, his demeanor steady. He held his weapon with practiced ease, eyes scanning for any sign of danger. As the craft docked with an external airlock, Corvallis activated a scanning device. "Atmosphere inside is stable but thin. No signs of active life support." Elena nodded, donning her helmet. "Stay alert. We're stepping into the unknown." The airlock opened with a hiss, revealing a dim corridor lined with glowing conduits. The walls seemed alive, faintly pulsing in rhythm with their footsteps. Valen ran a clawed hand over one of the glyphs, his expression a mix of curiosity and awe. "These markings," he said, his voice hushed. "They're not just decorative. They're functional, possibly a form of encoded information." "Can you translate it?" Elena asked. "Not yet," Valen admitted, "but they're remarkably similar to the codex transmissions. This vessel might be tied to its creators." The team moved deeper into the ship, their flashlights cutting through the eerie gloom. The corridors widened into a vast chamber, its centerpiece a towering obelisk. The structure hummed with energy, its surface covered in more of the shifting glyphs. "What is that?" Corvallis asked, her voice trembling. "Looks like a control nexus," Valen said, stepping closer. "If I can interface with it, I might be able to access the ship's data." "Proceed," Elena said, her eyes scanning the room. Trask stood a few feet away, his weapon raised and his posture tense. As Valen began his work, the chamber vibrated. A low, resonant sound filled the air, sending chills down their spines. "Captain," Corvallis said, panic creeping into her voice, "we've triggered something. Power levels are spiking." The obelisk flared to life, projecting streams of light that coalesced into a holographic form. It was humanoid but indistinct, its features obscured by shifting patterns. Seekers of the lost, the figure said in a language that seemed to echo in their minds. It's sentient, Valen whispered, awestruck. Elena stepped forward, her voice steady. We are explorers from Earth. We come seeking knowledge of the Codex. The figure regarded them silently, its form flickering. The Codex? The key, it must not fall again. Fall to whom? Elena pressed. The figure's image distorted, its voice rising. They come, the hunters. They will take all. Suddenly, the ship shook violently, throwing the team off balance. Alarms blared on their comms as Drake's voice crackled through. Captain, we've got incoming. Dominion ships, multiple signatures. Elena's heart raced. We need to leave. Now. As they scrambled back toward the boarding craft, the obelisk emitted one final pulse. A small glowing artifact emerged from its base, floating toward Elena. She hesitated only a moment before grabbing it, the object warm and vibrating in her hand. The ship's vibrations intensified, and the holographic figure's final words echoed in their ears. Protect the key, or all will be lost. They barely made it back to the craft before the ancient vessel began to collapse, its once majestic form disintegrating into shards of light and debris. As the boarding craft sped back to the Ecliptica, the crew braced themselves for the Dominion's assault, and the burden of what they had just unleashed. The Ecliptica rocked violently as energy blasts from the Dominion ships slammed into its shields. Elena steadied herself on the command deck, her voice cutting through the chaos. Drake, evasive maneuvers. Corvallis, reroute power to the shields. Trask, prepare the weapon systems. Don't fire unless we have no other choice. Captain, came the synchronized responses. On the view screen, 3 sleek Dominion warships loomed, their hulls gleaming with predatory precision. The leader of the formation opened a channel, and the visage of a Dominion commander appeared, cold eyes and sharp features framed by ornate armor. You've gone too far, humans, the commander sneered. Surrender the artifact, and we may consider sparing your lives. Elena stood tall, her voice calm yet firm. The artifact doesn't belong to you. We're not handing it over. The commander's expression hardened. Then you'll die with it. The transmission cut off, and the Dominion ships began to circle like wolves around wounded prey. Captain, they're charging weapons, Corvallis called out. Brace for impact, Elena ordered. The Ecliptica shuddered as the first volley struck, the shields barely holding. Trask's hands danced over the weapons console, locking targets. Permission to return fire, Captain. Not yet, Elena said through gritted teeth. Drake, get us into that debris field. We'll use it for cover. The Ecliptica dived toward the remnants of the ancient vessel, maneuvering through a chaotic storm of drifting shards and energy surges. The Dominion ships followed, their precision tracking systems adapting quickly to the shifting terrain. As the crew navigated the perilous field, Valen clutched the glowing artifact in his hands, his face a mask of concentration. Captain, the artifact is reacting to the Dominion's presence. It's sending out pulses like a beacon. Can you stop it? Elena asked, dodging falling debris as she approached him. Valen shook his head, not without destroying it, and that could be catastrophic. Then we'll have to make it work for us, Elena said, her mind racing. Corvallis, can you amplify those pulses? Corvallis hesitated, her fingers moving rapidly over her console. It's risky, but I think I can redirect the ship's communication array to boost the artifact's signal. Do it, Elena ordered. If the Dominion wants this artifact, let's make them regret it. As Corvallis worked, the Dominion ships closed in, their energy blasts chipping away at the Ecliptica's defenses. Shields at 30%, Corvallis warned. Hold steady, Elena said, her voice unwavering. Trask, prepare a concentrated burst from the plasma cannons. Aim for their engines, but wait for my signal. The artifact began to glow brighter, its pulses growing stronger. Suddenly, the debris field around them responded, fragments of the ancient ship aligning into a protective barrier around the Ecliptica. What the... Drake began, his eyes wide. The artifact's controlling the debris, Valen exclaimed. It's defending itself. The Dominion ships hesitated, their movements faltering as the barrier solidified. Now, Trask, Elena shouted. The Ecliptica's plasma cannons roared to life, their concentrated fire striking the lead Dominion ship's engines. The vessel spun out of control, colliding with one of its companions in a fiery explosion. The remaining Dominion ship retreated, its commander's final words echoing over the comms. This isn't over, humans. You've meddled with forces beyond your comprehension. As silence fell over the bridge, Elena exhaled a shaky breath. Damage report? Shields are down to 10%, Corvallis said, her tone weary. Hull integrity is stable, but we've got repairs to make. Elena turned to Valen, who still held the artifact. Whatever this thing is, it just saved us, but it's also put a target on our backs. We need to figure out what it wants, and fast. The crew exchanged uneasy glances, the weight of their discovery settling heavily. The artifact's glow dimmed, but its presence was undeniable. The Expanse isn't done with us yet, Elena said softly, her gaze fixed on the endless void ahead. And neither is the Dominion. The Ecliptica drifted in silence, the hum of the engines the only sound on the bridge. Elena stood with her arms folded, staring out into the void. The Dominion's retreat had given them a temporary respite, but she knew it wouldn't last long. Captain, we've stabilized the ship, Corvallis reported, her voice tinged with exhaustion. Shields are down, but we've patched the hull breaches. Minor damage to the propulsion system, but nothing that will keep us from moving. Good, Elena replied, her gaze still fixed on the stars. But we're not out of the woods yet. Valen, how's the artifact? Valen stood at his station, the glowing relic cradled in his hands. It pulsed faintly, almost as if responding to his touch. It's more than just an artifact, Captain. I believe it's a key, one that unlocks something deeper within this ship, or perhaps the Expanse itself. I can feel it calling, but I don't fully understand how to access it. Can you make sense of any of this? Elena asked, nodding toward the swirling glyphs on the artifact. I'm trying, Valen said, his voice strained. But the language, it's not linear. It's more like a web of interconnected concepts. Ideas within ideas, layered on top of one another. He paused, running a hand through his hair. It's going to take time to decode. We might not have that luxury. Elena's eyes narrowed. The Dominion will be back, and they'll bring reinforcements. We can't wait forever. I understand, Valen said, but I need to tap into the artifact's energy signature. If I can get a better reading, we might be able to unlock its functions. It's more than just a power source. It's a guide. Elena nodded. Then we have no choice but to move forward. Whatever this key is, it's our best shot at survival. A sudden alert blared across the bridge. Captain, Corvallis shouted, her fingers dancing across the console. Another Dominion fleet, larger than before. They've engaged warp, ETA, less than 2 hours. Damn it, Elena muttered. Trask, ready all weapons. Prepared to defend ourselves, but don't engage unless they give us no choice. Captain, Trask replied, his voice hardening with determination. Drake, get us moving, Elena ordered. We need to put some distance between us and them. Find us a place to hide, somewhere they won't expect. Captain, Drake responded, his hands working the controls with expert precision. The Ecliptica began to accelerate, weaving between nearby asteroids and debris, moving deeper into the shadows of the Expanse. Valen stepped closer to Elena, his eyes locked on the artifact. Captain, I think I might have a breakthrough. The artifact is reacting to the proximity of the Dominion fleet. It's like it's feeding off their presence. If we can get closer to them, it might activate in a way that will allow me to decipher its full potential. Elena's heart skipped a beat. You want to take us directly into their line of fire. Not exactly, Valen said, his voice growing more focused. But if we can reach a specific location in the expanse, there's a signal coming from deep within the storm. It could amplify the artifact's power. We might be able to unlock a weapon. A weapon? Elena repeated, her brow furrowed. Against the Dominion? Valen nodded. I believe so. But we'll have to get there first, and we'll have to outrun the Dominion while we're at it. Elena's mind raced. It's a gamble, but it's our best shot. We go in, we push the artifact to its limit, and we come out with something to defend ourselves. We don't have the luxury of hesitation. The crew exchanged determined glances, their resolve hardening. The Ecliptica pushed deeper into the expanse, headed for the unknown. The storm of the Shard expanse loomed ahead, its energy fields crackling with chaos. But for the first time since the Dominion had attacked, Elena felt a flicker of hope. They weren't just running anymore. They were searching for something far more powerful. And they were about to find it, whether they were ready or not. The Ecliptica plunged deeper into the Shard expanse, the ship's engines humming in rhythm with the rising tension. Outside, the stars twisted into strange, warped patterns as the ship entered the chaotic currents of the storm. The expanse was a wild place, a labyrinth of interdimensional storms, massive gravimetric shifts, and energy pulses that defied all logic. It was the perfect place for a relic like the artifact to hide or be hidden. Elena's gaze flicked between her crew, each of them focused on their tasks, their faces grim with the weight of their mission. They all knew what was at stake. If they didn't unlock the artifact's true power, the Dominion would crush them without mercy. Drake, keep us steady, Elena said, her voice calm, despite the mounting tension. We're getting close. Prepare for turbulence. Aye, Captain, Drake replied, his grip firm on the helm as he navigated the shifting currents. The ship jerked suddenly, throwing everyone off balance. Shifting gravimetric fields ahead. The ship lurched again, the entire crew bracing themselves. The expanse was alive, an untamed force of nature, and its chaos threatened to tear apart any vessel foolish enough to venture too deep. Corvallis, how's our systems holding up? Elena called. We're holding together for now, Corvallis responded, her voice strained as she typed rapidly on her console. But if we keep pushing forward at this pace, we might lose our power reserves. We don't have the luxury of slowing down, Elena said, her eyes darting to the artifact, still pulsing faintly in Valen's hands. Valen, how's it looking on your end? Valen was hunched over, his brow furrowed in concentration. The artifact had grown brighter with each passing moment, sending out ripples of energy that seemed to resonate with the ship itself. I'm getting something, faint, but it's there, a pattern. I think it's leading us to the heart of the storm. The heart of the storm, Elena echoed, a sense of unease creeping into her voice. It's the only way, Valen replied, not looking up. The artifact is a key, but it needs to be activated at the exact point where these energy flows converge. We'll have to get closer to the center if we want to unlock its true potential. Elena's lips tightened. Every instinct told her to turn back, to find a safer route, but she knew they didn't have the time. They had no choice but to trust in Valen's theory. Captain, Corvallis's voice cut through the tension. The Dominion fleet's closing in. They've entered the storm. They're not far behind. Elena turned, her jaw set. The Dominion wasn't about to let them slip away, not when they were so close to the artifact's power. Steady, everyone, Elena ordered. Drake, we're going to push through. Full power to the engines. We make it to the heart of this storm, and we'll give them a fight they'll never forget. The Ecliptica surged forward, its engines flaring as the ship cut through the chaos. The ship was bucking like a wild beast, its hull creaking under the strain of the turbulent fields. Valen gritted his teeth as the artifact began to glow brighter, its pulses synchronized with the ship's energy. I think it's working, he muttered under his breath, his hands shaking slightly. We're getting closer. I can feel it. Alina's eyes locked onto the swirling chaos ahead. The storm's heart, its core, was like a dark, glowing vortex that seemed to pull everything around it into its depths. She didn't know what would happen when they reached it, but she felt the shift in the air, the weight of fate pressing down on them all. Suddenly, the ship was hit by a massive shockwave, the force sending everyone sprawling. The lights flickered as alarms blared across the bridge. "Report," Elena shouted, rising to her feet. "We've lost power to the forward thrusters," Corvallis cried. "We're being pulled in." The Ecliptica lurched uncontrollably, dragged toward the center of the vortex. Elena's heart raced as she realized what was happening. The storm wasn't just a barrier. It was a trap, and they had walked straight into it. "We're caught in a gravimetric field," Drake shouted, struggling with the controls. "There's no way out." But even as panic threatened to seize them, Valen stood firm, his eyes fixed on the artifact. "It's now or never," he called out. "The artifact, it's connected to this field. If I can channel its power through the ship's systems, we might be able to stabilize." "Do it," Elena commanded. Valen's hands flew over his console, his voice rising in intensity as he poured everything he had into the artifact's power. The ship shuddered violently, and for a moment, it felt like they were about to be torn apart. Then, with a blinding flash, the entire ship surged forward, breaking free of the gravitational pull. The heart of the storm loomed ahead, its dark center now within their grasp. The artifact pulsed one last time, brighter than ever. Elena took a deep breath, realizing that they were about to discover the true nature of the artifact, and possibly their destiny. The Ecliptica surged forward, the storm's grip momentarily loosening as the artifact's power flowed through the ship's systems. Elena watched with bated breath as the crew struggled to regain control, the bridge filled with the chaotic hum of energy surging through the hull. "Captain," Valen called, his voice strained but determined, "we're almost there. The artifact is drawing all the energy from the storm. Its full potential is about to be unlocked." Elena steadied herself, her pulse quickening. They had reached the center of the storm, and the heart of the expanse pulsed before them, a swirling vortex of energy that seemed to exist beyond time and space itself. The ship was close, too close, to the gravitational anomaly at the storm's core. If they were to survive, the artifact had to activate now. "We need to stabilize," Corvallis shouted from her station. "If we go any further, we'll be torn apart." But Elena was resolute. The Dominion was close, far too close to allow them to fail. If this was the answer they had sought, the key to humanity's survival, it would reveal itself now, or they would perish trying. "Valen, do it. Whatever happens, we need that power now," Elena commanded. Valen's fingers danced across the console, his face glowing in the pale light of the artifact's pulse. Channeling the artifact's power, now. The ship's engines hummed to life in a way that felt almost unnatural, as though the ship itself had become a conduit for something far greater than its creators had ever envisioned. The storm around them began to calm, its ferocious energy shifting and realigning as the artifact's power swirled through the vessel. And then, with a sudden blinding explosion of light, the Ecliptica was bathed in pure raw energy. The storm around them flickered, as if momentarily torn between chaos and control. The ship shuddered violently, but its shields held steady, pushing against the intense force that radiated from the heart of the expanse. For a moment, everything went silent. The alarms and shouting from the crew ceased as they were swallowed by the overwhelming brilliance that filled the bridge. Elena's heart pounded in her chest, her breath held in anticipation. Then, just as suddenly, the light faded, leaving behind only a soft glow from the artifact. The ship stabilized, the chaotic forces of the expanse quelled. Elena opened her eyes to see the storm dissipating around them, like a curtain being drawn back to reveal a hidden truth. Ahead of them, the vast emptiness of the expanse stretched out before them, empty yet transformed. The storm? Corvallis whispered, her voice trembling. It's gone. We're free. Elena's gaze shifted toward the view screen, where the heart of the storm had once raged. Instead of the swirling chaos, there was now a glowing orb, pulsating with an unnatural light. It was as though the storm itself had been reshaped, transformed into something new, something with purpose. Valen, what did we do? Elena asked, her voice low. Valen stood motionless, staring at the artifact, his expression a mix of awe and disbelief. We didn't just survive, Captain. We awakened it. The artifact, it wasn't just a key. It's a beacon, a map. It's pointing us somewhere deeper into the expanse. Elena's mind raced. The storm was no longer just a chaotic force. It had been something else entirely, something more. The artifact had unlocked a path, a guide through the very heart of the unknown. Where is it pointing? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. Valen's fingers trembled as he input a final sequence into his console. The view screen flickered, and then a new image appeared, a map of sorts, not like any star chart they had seen before. It was a constellation of symbols and coordinates, each connected by threads of energy that pulsed faintly. It's pointing to the heart of the expanse itself, Valen said, his voice filled with awe. To the source of everything. Whatever created this storm, whatever left the artifact behind, we're on the verge of discovering it. Elena's mind reeled. The journey they had embarked on was far from over. It had only just begun. They had uncovered a mystery that could change the fate of humanity forever. But with the Dominion closing in, they knew they could not rest for long. We've got no time to waste, Elena said, her voice steady once more. Valen, plot a course. We're going to find out what's behind this, and we're going to be the ones to control it. The crew nodded, a shared sense of purpose binding them together. The Ecliptica had become more than just a ship. It had become the gateway to a new chapter in humanity's history, one filled with uncertainty, danger, and infinite potential. But no matter the cost, they would see it through, together. The journey had just begun.